The Iran-USA conflict has entered a more dangerous and unpredictable phase. Recent developments suggest that the war is no longer limited to military targets alone. Financial infrastructure, shipping routes, and regional economic hubs are now part of the discussion. This has raised fears across the Middle East and beyond. One of the most serious developments is the reported attack on a major Iranian bank. Iranian officials described this as a dangerous escalation in the conflict. In response, military spokesmen warned that economic centers across the wider region could now face greater risk. That warning has created concern in Gulf countries. When financial infrastructure becomes part of a war, the consequences spread far beyond the battlefield. Banks, payment systems, and investor confidence are all connected. If these systems are threatened, markets can react instantly. That is why this moment is being watched so closely. The warning issued by Iranian officials specifically mentioned the possibility of broader economic retaliation. This message was aimed at governments and businesses. It signaled that the conflict could move into a new phase, a phase where economic pressure becomes a weapon. This matters because the Gulf is a global hub. Cities like Dubai, Abu Dhabi, Manama, and Kuwait City play major roles in trade and banking. Any threat to those systems affects the global economy. Investors understand that risk immediately. At the same time, energy markets are already under intense pressure. Oil and gas supply chains have been disrupted by the conflict and by fears of further escalation. Uncertainty itself pushes prices upward. Markets react not only to damage, but also to fear. This is why the Strait of Hormuz remains central to the entire crisis. A significant share of the world's energy shipments passes through this narrow waterway. If traffic there becomes unsafe, the consequences would be global. Shipping costs, insurance costs, and fuel prices would all rise quickly. Military and political messaging around Hormuz has become especially important. Reports, threats, and counterstatements are shaping market expectations every day. Even a single official post or rumor can move oil prices sharply. Questions are now being asked about the real military balance in the region. Some statements suggest the United States remains fully in control. Other developments imply that Washington is struggling to secure stability around key maritime routes. That contrast has become a major part of the current debate. There was also controversy after a claim suggested a U.S. protected tanker had been escorted safely. That message appeared to calm markets for a short time. But later, officials clarified that no such naval action had taken place. This raised questions about credibility and crisis communication. In a war, information is also a battlefield. Governments try to reassure markets and shape public opinion, but reversals create even more uncertainty. Iranian officials then used that confusion to accuse Washington of spreading misleading information. Their argument was strategic and targeted. The broader point is that confidence is now fragile. Traders, shipping companies, and insurers are trying to read signals from incomplete information. Another serious concern is maritime mining. Analysts have warned that if Iran uses sea mines near Hormuz, commercial traffic would be severely disrupted. Even the fear of that possibility can keep ships away. Insurance companies may refuse to cover certain routes or sharply raise premiums. Claims now suggest that Iran may be signaling new methods to threaten maritime access, including missile or rocket technology to complicate naval movement. For the Gulf states, this is becoming more than a political crisis. If ports, refineries, and banks face greater threat, the core systems come under pressure. Reports of drone activity and refinery disruptions have increased public anxiety. Confidence is harder to maintain when disruptions keep expanding. Dubai has become a symbol of this tension. If instability begins to affect airport operations, investor psychology changes quickly. Perception causes damage. Air travel is now part of the war's economic story. Airlines may cancel routes or reduce frequency long before a complete shutdown occurs. Gulf states are watching air defense performance closely. Missile interception systems are expensive and finite. Every interception has a financial cost. If hundreds of interceptors are used in a short time, the financial burden becomes enormous. That burden matters in prolonged conflict scenarios. The economic consequences are no longer limited to headline oil prices. What happens in Hormuz does not stay in Hormuz. It affects daily life globally. India is one example of a country deeply exposed. A major share of its oil and gas supply depends directly or indirectly on Gulf shipping lanes. Long queues and public anxiety about gas cylinders have become part of the conversation in India. Global conflict becomes local reality through energy costs. This turns a distant war into a national economic issue. Fertilizer and industrial supply chains are tied to Gulf exports. Energy and food are connected. Other countries are adjusting their strategies. Reports indicate some are considering naval escorts for high-risk vessels. The militarization of trade grows. Pakistan has also appeared in these discussions. Its balancing act reflects a broader regional pattern of protecting strategic interests while avoiding conflict. China's role is also being watched carefully. Reports suggest some permitted oil movement through Hormuz has been linked mainly to Chinese vessels. If true, this shows how selective and strategic access is becoming. It underlines how deeply geopolitics now shapes global trade. Meanwhile, public statements from American officials continue to create uncertainty. Different members of the administration describe different strategies. Some talk about limited aims and controlled escalation. Others use language that suggests much broader options remain open. This hasn't gone unnoticed. Senators and media commentators are asking difficult questions. They want clarity on objectives, timelines, and the risk of a wider war. This matters because domestic political support affects war strategy. If leaders cannot explain the purpose, public confidence weakens. Markets notice. International allies are also signaling caution. Some support pressure in principle but avoid offensive operations. Others worry there is no clear endgame. Information from active zones remains difficult to verify. Media restrictions and relocations have raised questions. When reporting is hard, rumor fills the gap. The conflict is no longer only about missiles. It is about banks, refineries, ports, airports, and energy corridors. The foundations of the Gulf are at risk. For travelers and businesses, the risks are broadening. Disruption is now part of the real-world impact. This isn't just about battlefield maps anymore. The coming days will be critical. One path leads toward managed de-escalation. The other leads toward wider economic warfare and deeper instability. The region is facing a systems crisis. Energy flows, trade routes, finance, and civilian confidence are all under pressure. This combination is dangerous. The escalation of economic pressure marks a shift that could redefine regional stability for years. We will continue to monitor the situation as it develops. Thank you for watching. Stay informed as we track the global impact of the Iran-USA conflict.